I was born in May 1945 at the end of World War II. My father was in the Army and he was currently in the Philippines waiting for assignment, but then the war ended and so he didn't actually ever see combat. So I was born in an Army hospital. My dad wasn't there at the time, and the hospital, they had cloth diapers, and my mother says, how much do I owe you? And they said, well, we just need money to help pay for diaper service. And she says, all I have is $2.73. And they said, okay, we'll take it. That was it. $2.73. Okay, and then my uncle was in the Navy, and my aunt and my mom lived together in a tenement housing in Berkeley for the first 3 years, and my cousin Warren and I were really, really close as kids. I have a vague memory of being in a playpen out in a big field with apartments all around and crying because I couldn't see my mom. But that's how I remembered that. And then some men had found a community in the mountains in San Benito County in California, and they invited people to come and join this community. And so we moved down there when I was 3 years old. For 2 months, we lived in a tent up in the mountains until we found a place behind a building in town in San Juan Bautista. And my father set up a barbershop, and our family lived behind the barbershop. 3 of us were born during that time when we were there, yeah. It was just a dinky little thing. And we had electricity, sort of. We had all the homes up there had electrical lines to them, but they were connected to a generator. They were not connected to city electricity. So we had our own kind of way of getting electricity up there. And Eldred Holdaway was an electrician. He lived up there. And every morning he'd get up and turn the generator on at 8 o'clock in the morning and leave it on all day long, and then turn it off at 10 o'clock at night, because they figured that our refrigerators would be okay through the night because nobody would be getting into them. And so we lived that way for quite a while, which was a neat way to live. But because the electricity went on at 8 o'clock in the morning, we got up at about 6 o'clock and left at 7 o'clock in the morning to go catch the bus to go to school. And so there was no power to the house. So my mother would get up, and we had a hook in the kitchen, and there was a Coleman lantern hanging on the hook, and she would light it up in the morning so that we had light to get dressed by. And we had a regular stove, but we had a wood-burning stove that was about yay wide and pretty deep, and she'd lift up the cast iron lid, put the wood in it, start the fire in it, close it, and it would start heating up the cast iron so that she could use the heat from that stove to cook us a breakfast. And so that's also heated the kitchen. So all of us kids were in the kitchen getting dressed around the wood-burning stove with the light of the Coleman lantern, and that's just how our childhood was. And we'd run off and catch the bus, and it was a little ways up to the bus stop for us. But that was a unique thing that not everybody has. We did not have central heating. We had a fireplace in the living room, and we had our home had a kitchen and a living room. We built it, and then this big utility room in the middle with a butane stove there, a bathroom here, mom and dad's bedroom here, and a door here into a big bedroom for all 4 kids. And we put a dresser between the space for my brother so that he had his own little privacy, and my sister Ann and I slept together, and Ruth had her own bed. We were all in the same bedroom. Off of this bedroom was a small utility room where we put our canned food and stuff like that. So we were that way for quite a while. And when we were cold, we would all dress either around the stove in the kitchen or the butane stove in the utility room. There was also in the utility room, in the back corner between the storage room and the bathroom, a little nook for a washing machine that had ringers in it and 2 sinks so that you could wash and rinse into the one sink and the other. We just made it work. And we bathed in those big, deep sinks when we were little. till we got old enough to bathe in the shower. Take a shower. The area that we lived in the hills, we named Harmony Hills. It was just, we wanted to have harmony there. Our home was on the lower part of the hills. There were homes that went all the way up, and they had made a water tank and dug water lines to all of our homes so that we'd have water. But when the water tank would run low, the people at the top of the hill would not have water. We almost always had water. So one thing, we were very conscientious of conserving water. So to do the dishes, my mother would fill up the sink with water for washing and rinsing. When we finished doing the dishes, we'd scoop the water out into a mop bucket, and my mother would mop the floors. We didn't have carpets. We had linoleum floors then, so my mother would mop the floors and wring it out in the bucket. And then, because of the shortage of water, we did not flush the toilet all the time. There was a phrase back then, if it's yellow, let it mellow. If it's brown, flush it down. So my mother would take the dirty mop water, it didn't matter what went down the toilet, and she'd go pour it in, and that would flush the brown down. But the fact that everybody didn't have water, whenever we went to the store downtown, we would leave our house unlocked. We just never locked our house. And so we would often come home from the store and find our family room with 6, 8, 10 people in there waiting their turn to go have a shower. They just would come into our home and have a shower when they needed one, whether we were there or not. Up in the hills, there were a few people that lived in the canyon, but we had 2 party lines, 8 people to 1 line. So if somebody was on the phone and I wanted to make a phone call and they wouldn't get off, I would lift up and I say, "Can you please hurry? I need to make a call." Now that sounds really weird to tell other people to hang up so I can make a phone call, but we had a box and it had a crank, and we all had different numbers that ended. Our phone number was 166Y22, and the 22 meant 2 long rings and then 2 short rings. And so when the phone would ring, we'd listen, and if there was 2 longs and 2 shorts, then we would pick up and talk. If there was 1 long and 3 shorts, or 3 long and 1 shorts, or 2 long and 1 short, that wasn't for us, it was for somebody else. And that's how we lived with the phone, and people can't even imagine telling somebody, "Please get off the phone so I can make a call." When little boys would come for a haircut and they'd be scared and start crying, my father would have me come out and sing primary songs to them. And I could always carry a tune from a very young age. So I love singing, and if there's something that I can put to music, I can memorize it and remember it for the rest of my life. So I just would sing to the little boys when they came for haircuts there. Then, okay, we lived in there while we built our home up in the hills, and we moved up into that home when I was 6 years old. And I started school and went to San Juan School for all 8 years, and then Hollister High School for the next 4 years. Rode the school bus 12 years in a row, and they started up with us and picked up all the strays in the county. So I was on the bus for like an hour to school every day, just picking everybody up, and an hour home. Got a lot of homework done on the bus that way. Yes, and then, another interesting thing, back in those days, they sold flour in cloth bags, and it was right after the Depression, and people were struggling, and so women would save the cloth bags and wash them and make clothes out of them. So they started printing designs on the cloth, and so my mother would buy flour in sacks of the same design, and so I had a really cute little flour sack dress, and she made matching underpants for me. And all my little friends, we all had flour sack dresses. So my dad was a barber, and we would find out when he was going to be finished at work, and especially in warm weather. So in the evening, afternoon, we'd hop on our bikes, and where we lived, it was just a slow downhill down through this beautiful canyon into the town. And we'd get on our bikes and we'd ride down, and it's easy because you didn't have to go uphill at all. No pedaling. We just coasted our way to town. And then we would throw our bikes in the back end of the truck, and then we'd get into the back end because there was no law against riding in the back of a truck during that time. And that's just a really happy memory. And then when Doug got older and went out to visit, he did the same thing, rode his bike down, and then my dad brought him back. So it's a memory for him too. My parents met on their missions, and my father thought my mother was beautiful. Anyway, she got married they got married like 3 weeks after she came home from her mission. Or he came home, I don't remember which, wasn't around then. But my father was the baby of 14, and his parents were like 48 when he was born, and he had always work to do. And it was a very hard life for him, and we work. And so my mother was very loving and kind. She'd been raised by Depression parents too, so life was hard, but there was such a sternness from my father that it was hard to relax. As a child, I felt valued if I was working. If I was relaxing and he drove home, I'd just get up and get going to work on something. I couldn't be caught resting or whatever. And it's taken me a long time to grow out of that, because I married Rod, who's the exact opposite of what my father was, and it's a huge blessing. But I'd still, when he'd come home from work, if I was resting, I'd have to get up and go do something when he came home. And he says, "You don't have to do that with me." It's taken me a long time in my life to let go of that rigid feeling of having to always be busy. We would wash the clothes and then hang them on the clothesline. Not many people hang clothes on the clothesline anymore. And I remember I wanted to earn money, and so there was a lady that said that she would pay me to iron her hankies and her pillowcases. So to this day, I am so grateful I don't have to iron pillowcases, and I don't care how wrinkled the handkerchiefs are, they're not going to get ironed. That was just, I did it as a little girl to earn money, and I'm done. When I was young, there was a time that my dad did not earn very much money, and my mother wanted to be able to feed us healthy food. And you've seen like frosted mini wheats, those little frosted or little shredded wheats. Well, they used to have a biscuit about this size, a shredded wheat biscuit, and we would break it. And my mother thought that would be a healthy food. So she would buy shredded wheat, and we ate shredded wheat breakfast, lunch, and dinner for about 2 months. Yes, because she wanted to feed us nourish, and that's all that she could afford. Our cars had a running board. The car would, on the side of it, there was something that you could stand on outside the doors. And so it was really fun. If the person in the front seat and the back seat would roll down their window, I could ride home on the running board and put my arm through the post of the front seat to the back seat to hold on. You never see a kid riding on a running board anymore. I wish there were running boards now to help me get up into the truck. Our shoes were not made very well then, and the sole, if the shoes were old, the sole would often come down, and when you'd walk, it would kind of flap. So we would just tape it rather than get new shoes because it cost a lot of money. And so I remember taping my shoes, and I remember that if it was raining, I would take my shoes off when I got off the bus and go home barefooted to save my shoes from getting wet, because then the sole would flop off. So I remember seeing kids at school with their shoes taped. I guess shoes just were not made very well then. Our mom would work. There was a time that she worked at night, through the night, at a spinach plant in town. My mother would take in other people's dirty laundry and wash it, dry it, hang on the line and iron it and take it back to them, and they'd pay her for it. When we started high school, my mother worked in a department store in Hollister called Baughman's, and so she got her fabric and everything cheaper there. Because when I would work to earn money for school clothes, my mother would say, "You can buy an outfit, or you can go shopping with me and get fabric, and I'll make your clothes." So my mother made almost all of our clothes. My mother made my wedding dress. We bought the fabric for $20, and she spent 80 hours just sewing the lace on it. She said she kept track of the time, but she made my wedding dress for me. And when I was in grammar school, a movie was made called Vertigo, and Alfred Hitchcock was the producer, and Jimmy Stewart and Kim Novak were the actors in it. And so there's a scene in there where there's an old mission, and that's where they did a lot of the filming. And they let us kids out of school early to go down and watch the filming. And we'd go down and watch, and one day on the street, Jimmy Stewart was there, and he stopped and talked to us, and he was just so nice. We met saw Kim Novak, but I didn't ever get her autograph. Saw Alfred Hitchcock, and I asked for his autograph, but he said, I don't have time to give you mine, and so whatever. I don't have good feelings. I thought, if that's how you want to be remembered, that's your decision. But Jimmy Stewart was a really, really nice guy. It was a fun time for our town to get to have that. When I was younger, I worked cutting apricots in the summertime as 12, 13 years old to earn money for my school clothes. And then I worked cutting garlic. And I'd sit out in this dusty old hot dark garlic field cutting garlics and my hands blistered. But almost, probably 90% of my friends were Mexicans. And I loved them dearly. And then I would see all these Mexican workers out in the field, and they worked so hard. And it was the hardest job I ever did. And I told my mom, I said, this is so hard. She came and worked a morning with me and said, you don't have to do this one anymore. But from then, I had this really, really strong desire to learn to speak Spanish. And so when I went to high school, I took 1 year of Spanish. So anyway, in high school, I made all these friends. And I had friends that were Spanish speaking and American, and we were a melting pot of all kinds of cultures. And then in high school, I kind of had a boyfriend, and the football team got together and they chose their candidate for homecoming queen, and they chose me to represent our class. And then there was one from every class. But anyway, my senior year, I was nominated and voted as homecoming queen. That was kind of fun. I was one of the older ones in my high school class. And I had there were 6 of us. And I could take the car over to football games. And then after the games, we would drag Main, where you'd go up and turn around at a corner, go all the way down to a gas station, go through there and go up and wave at everybody. And my friends would each give me 5 cents, a nickel, so that I could go buy a gallon of gas for 30 cents and use that to drag Main, so that we had the money to do it. And then during dragging Main, if there was a stoplight, we'd get out and do a Chinese fire drill. So I was the driver. I stayed in the car, but my friends would open the door and get out and run around the car and then get back in, and then we'd go. And it was a small enough town that it was okay, and we just had so much fun. And if we were short on gas, we went to the gas station where we would turn around in and go back. We would just stay there and wave to everybody. We just had a lot of friends. It was just a really fun time. However, my dad would be worried a little bit about me driving home late at night, because I had to go from Hollister, where we went to school, into San Juan Bautista, and then go up the canyon to Harmony Hills. And it was dark, and so he would make me take a man's hat and put my hair up in this hat, and I would wear it so that I looked like I was a man driving, so that nobody would bother me on my way home. So that was something that was kind of interesting. Up in the hills where we lived, this little LDS community was called Harmony Hills, and we built a chapel there, and we called everybody aunt and uncle instead of brother and sister, so we all felt like everybody's cousins. And so we just did a lot of activities together as friends in the church up there. My mother's first baby lived 4 days and then passed away. My mother's second baby was a stillborn. So I am my mother's 3rd baby, but the first one to get to live. But I'm number 2. I count them myself, number 2 in the family. 1.5 years later, my brother Sterling was born. Then 4 years later, my sister Ruth was born. And then 6.5 years later, my younger sister Anne was born. My sister Ruth had passed away 2 years ago. My little sister Anne and I said, you better take care of yourself because I'm not going to lose another sibling. So we're really close. My brother he served in Vietnam, and his life has been real hard since that. He has some PTSD from that. But he married a girl from his 5th marriage, a girl from high school who was a friend of mine. She was a year younger than me, but she is so understanding of him and helps him. So we still keep in touch. I have a granddaughter getting married in a month, and he's going to come, and my sister's going to come, and we're just going to have a little bit of time together again.